She was 78, and she came to see me about money, which is the only reason I know this story at all. Her accounts were draining faster than they had any right to, and she wanted to understand why. And so we sat down and went through it the way we always did. And what it came to was this. She'd had a diagnosis about 14 months earlier. Nothing unusual for her age. The sort of thing that gets managed rather than cured. But it meant specialists, and it meant procedures. And every one of them came with a share she had to pay herself. So she'd done the sensible thing. She had run up in the autumn and said she'd like to move over to traditional Medicare with one of those supplement plans, the kind that covers the part you'd otherwise owe. And she was told she could certainly move to traditional Medicare any autumn she liked. But the supplement plan, the thing that would actually have made it affordable, she could not have. They asked her a list of health questions, and they looked at her history, and they said no. And I want you to sit with the shape of that for a second, because it took me some years to see it properly. She was refused the coverage on the grounds that she needed it. That's not an accusation, and it isn't fraud. It's how underwriting works, and it's perfectly legal, and everybody in the business knows it. But the effect on a 78-year-old woman at my desk was that the door she thought she could walk back through had quietly locked, and it had locked a very long time ago, on a Tuesday in her 65th year, in a 20-minute telephone call she barely remembered. My name is Harold Briggs, 43 years in a small-town Ohio bank, branch manager for the last 19. Now, I am not a health man, and I'm not going to tell you which coverage to have. That is genuinely not my place. And anybody on the internet who tells you the answer without knowing your health, your doctors, or your county is not being straight with you. What I am is somebody who watched, from the money side, what happened to households afterward. And today I want to explain the one feature of this decision that is not about health at all. It's about whether you can change your mind. Because that turns out to be the whole thing, and hardly anybody is told about it at the moment they choose. Two thoughts I can hear. The first, Harold, I'm perfectly healthy. This doesn't apply to me. Friend, that is precisely the trap, and I want to be gentle but very clear. Being healthy is exactly the condition you are in when you make this choice, and being healthy is exactly why the cheaper option looks so obviously correct. The decision is made by the well and paid for by the sick, and they are the same person 12 years apart. The second thought, Harold, I already chose. It's done. Stay, please. Because there are two specific windows in the rules, and one of them may still be open to you, and I'll give you both, including the number of days you have. So, the two roads, and I'll describe them fairly because both of them are legitimate and both of them are right for somebody. Road 1 is traditional Medicare, the government program itself. Its great virtue is freedom. Any doctor, any hospital in the country that takes Medicare, and there aren't many that don't. No network, no referral. No company deciding whether the thing your doctor wants is a thing you may have. But traditional Medicare, broadly speaking, pays around 80% of your covered costs, and you are responsible for the rest. And here's the part that matters to a banker. On its own, that remaining share has no ceiling. There's no annual maximum where it stops. A bad year is as expensive as the bad year happens to be. Which is why most people on this road also buy a supplement plan, sometimes called Medigap. And those two words mean the same thing. That plan covers the share you'd otherwise owe, and you pay a monthly premium for it, and in exchange, your cost becomes something you can actually write in a budget. Road 2 is a Medicare Advantage plan. You get your benefits through a private plan instead. These very often carry a low premium or none at all, and they frequently include things the traditional program doesn't cover: dental, vision, hearing, sometimes more. In exchange, they're network plans, so your doctors and hospitals may or may not be in them, and that can change from year to year. The plan sets its own charges for each service, and it will generally require its say-so on certain treatments. And they do have an annual cap on what you can be made to pay, which the traditional program by itself does not. And that is a real advantage, and I want it on the record. So there is no villain here. In certain parts of the country, the Advantage plans are genuinely strong. For plenty of households, they're the right call, and they work well for years. What I'm about to describe isn't an argument against either road. It's the thing about the junction between them that nobody puts up a sign for. Here it is. When you first come onto Medicare, at 65 or whenever you first take Part B, a window opens. It runs about 6 months. During that window, you can buy any supplement plan you want, and they must take you. No health questions. No history. Pre-existing conditions are simply irrelevant. You are, for those few months, unrefusable. And then the window shuts. And in most states, from that point on, if you want to buy a supplement plan, the insurer is entitled to underwrite you. They can ask the health questions, look at your record, and decline you. Now, a handful of states have their own rules that soften or remove this. And if you live in one of them, a great deal of what I've just said doesn't apply to you. So please find out which kind of state you're in. I'd genuinely like to know, and I'll come back to that at the end. Quick pause. My ebook, You Earned It Twice, gives you 52 practical calls to make about Medicare, Social Security, taxes, and bills. It's the first link in the description. But now put the two halves together, because this is the sentence I want you to carry out of this video. You can always go back to traditional Medicare. Every autumn during the annual period, you may drop an Advantage plan and return. That door is never locked. What may be locked is your ability to buy the supplement that makes traditional Medicare affordable to live with. So the door back is open, and the room behind it may be empty. That is the whole gotcha, in one line, and it is the reason a healthy 65-year-old making a sensible-looking choice can find, at 78, that the choice is hardened into a fact. And I want to point out that this is the same shape as something I talked about a few videos ago, when we did paying off the house. It's not really a question about the product. It's a question about whether you can still move. Money you can't reach isn't as useful as money you can, and a road you can't turn off isn't as good as one you can. And in both cases, the cost of losing that freedom is invisible for about a decade, and then arrives all at once. If you take one idea from this whole channel, let it be that one. Optionality is worth paying something for, and almost nobody prices it, because on the day you choose, it feels like paying for nothing at all. And let me say something about when this decision gets made, because I think the timing is half the problem, and nobody ever mentions it. Turning 65 is one of the busiest administrative moments in an adult life. You are very possibly also working out when to take Social Security, and whether to keep working, and what happens to the coverage you had through your employer, and there's a stack of posts arriving daily and a deadline attached to most of it. And into that fortnight, this decision gets slipped, and it looks like the easy one. It looks like choosing an insurance plan, which is a thing everybody has done a dozen times in their working life. And it does not announce itself as the one with the door that locks. Every other insurance decision you have ever made in your life was reversible. You changed car insurers, you changed home insurers, you shopped around and switched, and nobody asked you a health question. 65 years of experience have trained you to believe this is a low-stakes, changeable sort of choice. And that training is what does the damage, because it's the one time it isn't true. Now let me put the two roads in the terms I actually understand, which is not medicine, it's cash flow. On the supplement road, you're paying a known monthly premium, and it is not small, and in exchange your medical costs become close to predictable. You can write next year's number on a piece of paper in December and be broadly right. On the Advantage road, you're paying little or nothing each month, and instead you carry the charges as they come, up to a yearly ceiling. Now both of those are perfectly respectable ways to run a household, but they are different animals, and here's the difference as it looked from behind my counter. In a quiet year, the second household is plainly ahead, and they can see it every single month in money they didn't spend. In a heavy year, the first household barely notices anything has happened, and the second one is writing checks all year until they reach the ceiling. Neither is wrong. But if you're the sort of person for whom an unpredictable year is genuinely difficult, and a great many retired households are exactly that sort, then predictability is not a luxury you're overpaying for. It's the product. And I watched people discover which sort of household they were in the middle of the year they found out. If that's useful, hit the like button, because somebody is going to make this decision this month on a phone call. And subscribe, I do one every day. Now let me talk about why the choosing is so lopsided, because you deserve to know how the information reaches you. Insurance agents are generally paid commission for enrolling you, and the arrangements are not identical across the two roads, and there's a great annual push in the autumn. Look at the advertising that lands on your mat and on your television between October and December, and count how much of it is for one road. And notice the language, because it's usually built around the extras. Get the dental and vision you're entitled to. Free benefits. It's a bit like standing on a car lot while a man tells you at length about the cup holders and the sound system and never once mentions how the thing handles in the wet. The extras are real. They're just not the part that decides how the next 15 years go. And again, I'm not accusing anybody of dishonesty. Most agents I ever dealt with were decent people. But there's an old rule I learned early, behind that counter, and it has never once let me down. Find out how the person advising you gets paid, and you'll understand about 80% of the advice before they open their mouth. That's not cynicism, it's just knowing what you're listening to. Which brings me to something I want to press on you, because it's free and hardly anybody uses it. Every state has a health insurance counseling program for people on Medicare, staffed largely by trained volunteers, funded to give unbiased help, and forbidden from selling you anything at all. Search for your state's name and Medicare counseling, or ask at your local senior center and they'll know it. If you talk to one person before you choose, talk to somebody who cannot earn a penny from what you decide. That is worth more than anything else I'll say today. There's one more thing I should be honest about, and it's uncomfortable, and I've thought about whether to include it. The reason that 6-month window exists at all, and the reason underwriting is allowed afterward, is not malice. It's that an insurance pool only works if people can't wait until they're ill to join it. If anybody could buy a supplement plan on the day they got a diagnosis, the plans would cost a fortune or wouldn't exist. So the rule is doing a real job, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's a scandal, because it isn't. What is genuinely wrong to my mind is not the rule. It's that a person can pass through the one window that will ever be open to them without a single soul mentioning that it's a window. The rule is defensible. The silence is not. And the silence is the only part that this video can actually do anything about. Now the escape hatches, because there are two and they're written right into the rules, and I'd wager most people watching have never heard of either. They're called trial rights, and each one is a window in which you can buy a supplement plan with no underwriting even though your original 6 months are long gone. The first is for somebody who went straight onto an Advantage plan when they first became eligible, and who has had it less than 12 months. If that's you, you may drop it, return to traditional Medicare, take a drug plan, and buy a supplement plan without any health questions at all. The second is for somebody who had a supplement plan, gave it up to try an Advantage plan for the first time, and doesn't care for it. In that case, you generally have up to 12 months to go back to the plan you had, the same letter with the same company, again without underwriting, and if that exact plan no longer exists, there's provision to get a guaranteed one available in your state instead. Both of those come with timing that is unforgiving, so write this down. You generally have to apply for the supplement plan no earlier than about 60 days before your Advantage coverage ends, and no later than about 63 days after it ends. That's the window. Miss it, and you are back to being underwritten like anybody else. And the first hatch has an additional condition about your Part A and Part B having started together. So if you delayed one of them, it may not be available to you. These are exactly the sorts of details that are easy to get wrong from memory, which is why I want you to take the idea to your state counseling service rather than my precise wording. What matters is that you know the hatches exist, so you know to ask, and so that if somebody tells you flatly that nothing can be done, you know there's at least a question worth putting. And now, because I began this video with a hard story, let me give you the other one, and it's just as true, and I saw it just as clearly. There was a couple, and they went the Advantage route at 65, and they went into it with their eyes open, which is the whole point of the difference. He'd worked at a place with a hospital system right there in town, the same system every doctor they'd ever seen belonged to, and the plan was built around it. They were not going anywhere. They had no intention of wintering in another state, and no relatives to be ill near. And she said something to me once that I've always thought was about the wisest sentence anybody ever said to me on this subject. She said, "Harold, we're not gambling that we won't get sick. We're betting that we'll get sick here." And they were right. They lived another 20-odd years. They used that plan hard in the last stretch of it. They hit their yearly ceiling more than once, and it held. And in the quiet years in between, they had a great deal of money in their pockets that the other road would have taken in premiums. That was a good decision, made by people who understood exactly which bet they were placing and why the local answer was the right answer for them. So please hear the actual argument I'm making, because it is not the argument you'll hear from most people who talk about this. I'm not telling you one road is better. I'm telling you that one of these choices comes with a hinge on it, and the other one comes with a lock, and you are entitled to know which is which while you're still standing in the doorway. That couple knew. The woman at the start of this video did not, and she'd have made the same choice she made anyway, quite possibly, but she'd have made it knowing what she was setting down. So here's what I'd ask you to do this week, and it depends which of three people you are. If you are approaching 65, or you're about to take Part B for the first time, this is the most consequential few months of the whole business, and you may not get another like it. Before you sign anything, ring your state's counseling program. Ask them plainly what happens if I want to switch later, and what happens in my state specifically, and do the arithmetic on both roads across a bad year, not an average one. Because an average year tells you very little about a decision whose whole purpose is bad years. If you're already on an Advantage plan and it's been less than a year, look up the trial rights today, because you may be sitting inside a window you didn't know you had, and windows close. And if you're already on an Advantage plan and have been for years, please don't spend a minute regretting it. It may well be exactly right for you, and a great many people are happy on that road for the rest of their lives. What I do in your position is two things. Once a year, when the plan's annual notice arrives, actually read the part about what's changing, because networks and charges do move, and find out whether your state is one of the ones with its own protections, because if it is, you may have more freedom than this whole video suggests. And send this to somebody turning 65. That's the whole request. There's a person in your life right now getting 3 pieces of post a week about this. And every one of those letters is from somebody who gets paid when they say yes, and none of them are going to mention the 6-month window or what happens afterward. Then leave me a comment, and this is the one I want most. Tell me what state you're in and what you chose, and if you've ever tried to switch, tell me what happened. I especially want to hear from anybody who was turned down, and from anybody in one of the states with different rules, because between you, the people in this comment section know the real map of this country far better than any article does. And somebody choosing next month is going to scroll down and find their own state in your words. I read every single one. And subscribe, because next time I'm doing the 2 Medicare penalties that never go away. Not a one-off fine, not a bad year. A surcharge added to your premium for the rest of your life, for missing a deadline most people don't know exists, and it catches out one group in particular. Those who are still working at 65 and quite reasonably assume they don't need to do anything yet. Everything I've shared today is general educational information from a retired banker. It is not insurance, medical, financial, or legal advice, and it is not a recommendation of any plan or any type of coverage. Medicare rules, enrollment windows, trial rights, and supplement underwriting protections vary significantly by state and change over time. Please confirm anything here with your state's Medicare counseling program or the official Medicare service before you act, and understand that the right choice genuinely differs from one household to the next. That is not me covering myself. That is just sound banking. If you want more clear Medicare guidance that helps you protect the money you work so hard to keep, subscribe to the channel. Look after your money. You earned it twice, once when you worked for it, and once when you kept it. I'll see you in the next one.